In today's hyper-connected world, where constant posting, endless messaging, and curated vulnerability are not just encouraged but expected, we've largely abandoned one of the most powerful tools in human interaction: intentional silence. While most people race to announce their goals, express every thought, and expose their playbook to the public, the most skilled tacticians know when to stop talking. They understand that silence, when wielded with purpose, can be a weapon. Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century Florentine thinker and strategist, grasped this better than most. Though remembered for the blunt directives in The Prince, his greatest insights often center on what's left unsaid. The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, he warned, recognizing that speech crafts illusions while silence preserves truth. In a time of compulsive disclosure, mastering strategic silence doesn't merely protect your position, it delivers outcomes that constant speakers rarely achieve. You win, while others are still narrating their attempt to. The price of speaking. Too much Machiavelli lived in a time when a careless phrase could lead to imprisonment or death. Though stakes today are less fatal, the risks of talking too freely remain. Every word exposes you to scrutiny. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, he wrote, meaning people assess based on surface impressions, not substance. Speech creates exposure. It invites assumptions, and it comes with consequences. Silence sidesteps. First, words create obligation. Declaring your intentions ties you to them. If you later shift course, you're seen as unreliable or deceptive. Silence leaves you free to maneuver without having to justify yourself. Second, constant talking uncovers how you think, revealing your logic, your gaps, your limits. Others can exploit that visibility. The first method for estimating a ruler's intelligence is to look at the people he surrounds himself with, Machiavelli noted. Likewise, you can gauge someone's strategic depth by how much they needlessly reveal. Third, and most critical, overtalking erodes your aura. It is better to be feared than loved, Machiavelli said. Fear requires space. Space requires mystery. A leader who over-explains, over-justifies, and overshares becomes familiar, and familiarity weakens authority. We see this clearly in modern life. The co-worker who comments on every issue dilutes their impact. The friend who shares every detail online becomes predictable. The negotiator who can't handle silence gives away power. The leader who responds to every jab gives their critics legitimacy. Machiavelli would call this obsession with transparency and open communication a strategic miscalculation, a needless exposure that grants others insight without securing value in return. 3 variants of strategic silence. Machiavellian silence isn't mere muteness. It's an intentional form of communication that adapts based on context. There are 3 primary forms. Silence as intelligence gathering. The wise man does at once what the fool does at last, Machiavelli wrote. The fool speaks early, exposes his position, and learns nothing. The wise remain quiet, listening. First, gathering insights on motives, strategies, and vulnerabilities. This silence generates a knowledge imbalance. Others show their hand. You don't. In negotiations, this principle is clear. The first to speak often loses. In relationships, the good listener often sees dynamics more clearly than the talker. In competition, those who publicize their plans often underperform. Silence before action breeds advantage. Silence as a source of authority power depends on perception. Perception thrives in silence. A prince must be both fox and lion, Machiavelli wrote. The fox survives through cleverness, knowing when. Words diminish more than they strengthen. When a figure speaks selectively, their words land with weight. When someone replies only to what matters, rather than reacting to everything, they project strength. People naturally fill gaps with positive assumptions. That's why the most powerful people usually say less and do so more deliberately. The insecure over-explain. The confident state things simply. The junior responds to every provocation. The seasoned strategist picks their battles. The less you say, the more it matters when you do. Silence to preserve ambiguity. It is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, that applies beyond love and fear. It applies wherever multiple audiences need to hear different things. Ambiguity is power. When you don't clarify your position, others read into your silence whatever they hope or fear you mean. That grants you freedom. Freedom to appeal to varied groups. Freedom to act without contradicting previous statements. Freedom to deny ever having committed. Politicians use this often. Vague messaging allows broader appeal. Negotiators stay vague to keep room for leverage. Leaders paint visions without chaining themselves to a narrow execution path. This isn't deception, it's flexibility, and over-explaining too early can destroy that. The psychology behind silence. Strategic silence isn't just a tactic, it's a psychological force. Here's why it works, where persuasion often fails. Silence invites projection. Human brains. Fill empty space. When you say nothing, others project their own biases, fears, or fantasies onto that silence. That tells you more about them than direct conversation ever could. Men are so simple and so obedient to present necessities. Machiavelli said that he who deceives will always find someone who lets himself be deceived. Strategic silence leverages this without needing to lie. This is why skilled interrogators use pauses. Silence makes others uncomfortable, and discomfort often spills secrets. The same applies in business deals. The one who can sit quietly after an offer often gets more than the one who rushes to justify. Silence repositions the power dynamic. The person who speaks first is usually the one seeking approval. The one who speaks last, or least, signals that others must impress them. That shift can subtly alter negotiations, meetings, and conflicts. It's why a job candidate who asks intelligent questions often appears more competent than one who just talks about themselves. Why the quiet person at a table seems more influential. Why a calm pause in a dispute can land heavier than any rebuttal. Silence builds mystique. Men judge more by what they see than what they feel. What's not revealed feels more powerful. The person who over-discloses, who explains every insecurity, shares every motive, broadcasts every plan, becomes ordinary. But the one who shares with intention keeps an edge. Leaders who expose their reasoning too much erode their mystique. They become relatable, yes, but also replaceable. Those who share outcomes without narrating the process retain an aura that elevates their influence, not through illusion, but through calculated discretion. The modern cult of transparency, contemporary culture idolizes transparency. We're told to speak our truth, be radically open, overshare for the sake of authenticity. But Machiavelli would challenge that. The promise made was a necessity of the past. The broken word is a necessity of the present. Why? Because full transparency locks you into positions that may no longer serve you. The worship of openness becomes a cage. To be clear, this isn't a case for deceit. Machiavellian silence isn't about lying. It's about choosing what deserves to be said and what doesn't. Never try to win with force what you can win with deception, he said. In modern terms, never speak what silence can achieve better. The transparency trap shows up everywhere. In the workplace, sharing incomplete ideas, over-explaining thoughts not yet formed, exposing your hand in negotiations, in relationships, revealing every fear or mistake before it's necessary, posting every detail of your life before understanding who benefits from that information. To Machiavelli, these aren't signs of authenticity, they're acts of self-sabotage. You give up leverage and gain nothing in return. Predictability, exposure, and over-familiarity destroy influence. Strategic silence in action. How can you apply this practically? It's not about never speaking. It's about speaking with purpose. Use silence when it provides more advantage than talking. Lead with listening. Before offering your perspective, gather as much as you can. Ask questions, watch reactions, catch what goes unspoken. Only then decide if speaking serves you. Protect your flexibility. Don't commit to details too early. Leave space for adaptation. In professional spaces, that means outlining goals while keeping execution fluid. In personal settings, it means signaling intent without scripting every step. In competition, it means letting others tip their hand while you hold yours. Get comfortable with discomfort. Most people rush to fill silence. Don't. Let it stretch. After you speak, don't. Soften or rush to explain. Let your words hang. After criticism, absorb it before responding. After decisions, let the action speak. You'll find that silence often says more. The strategic whisper Machiavelli never said to stay silent always, only that silence must be part of your strategy. It's not about hiding, it's about contrast. You reveal some things, hold back. Others, you let people wonder. The vulgar are always taken by appearances, he noted, and the world is mostly vulgar. Those who share sparingly break that mold. Their words weigh more. Their actions carry mystery. Their influence feels earned, not forced. And in a culture of constant noise, that silence is magnetic. This takes discipline, rare today. It demands patience, restraint, and the courage to be underestimated. But precisely because it's rare, it gives you an edge. The final irony? The masters of this strategy remain mostly unseen. The loud get noticed. But those who speak with purpose, who keep their counsel, who observe more than they announce, they win without anyone realizing how. That's why Machiavelli, though endlessly quoted, is so often misunderstood. His name is linked with cunning and cruelty. But beneath that reputation lies something deeper, an understanding that the sharpest form of power often comes not from domination, but from discretion. Sometimes the most effective move is to say nothing and let others tell you everything. But the implications go further. The silence that shapes history. Across time, history favors not only the conquerors who charged into battle, but also the tacticians who sat still and listened. Think of the founding of empires, the rise of dynasties, the fall of regimes, not always the result of roaring commands or fiery speeches, but often due to secrets held, words withheld, and truths revealed only when the advantage was irreversible. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon not with grand announcements, but with calculated defiance. His silence before the move created panic in the Senate. Uncertainty, not noise, is what destabilized his enemies. Napoleon, too, mastered ambiguity. He'd say little, observe much, and let opponents reveal their hand before he crushed them underfoot. The silence of power doesn't mean passivity. It means readiness, stillness like a drawn bow, the illusion of transparency. We are told to be open books, that silence is weakness, that clarity is virtue, but clarity too early is vulnerability. A wise person guards the ink until the moment is right to write. Modern institutions, corporations, governments, even influencers have bought into the religion of radical transparency. But what has it given us? Oversaturation, paralysis, a loss of mystique. When everyone tells all, nothing stands out. Power dissolves into chatter. Machiavelli understood this, that a leader must often operate beyond the expectations of the crowd. He must at times let others believe they know his next step, while preparing something entirely different. Strategic silence as social leverage. Look at how this operates interpersonally. In romantic dynamics, silence is magnetic. The person who doesn't overshare too early, the one who listens instead of trying to impress, naturally becomes more desirable. They allow curiosity to ferment, which is the soil in which attraction grows. In social groups, the quiet observer often holds more sway than the loudest voice. Why? Because they see what others miss. While egos clash in the open, the strategist watches in silence and strikes with precision when the time is right. In business, silence is profit in negotiation. Silence isn't absence, it's presence amplified. The salesperson who keeps talking talks the client out of the deal. The coach, investor who reveals their ceiling before hearing the counterparty's position, sabotages their own leverage. The entrepreneur who over-explains their startup before securing intellectual protections invites theft of their ideas. In each case, speaking too much doesn't just reduce impact, it actively transfers power. The power player learns to weaponize, pauses, to make others uncomfortable enough to reveal their thoughts, to let the silence do the asking. The algorithm doesn't favor the wise. Today's digital culture punishes silence. Algorithms reward immediacy, frequency, performance. Quiet reflection is invisible to the feed. But let's be clear, just because you're not being seen doesn't mean you're not advancing. In fact, the strategist builds in silence, they sharpen in shadows. By the time others catch on, the game has already changed. And so, you must ask, who are you performing for? Who benefits from your unfiltered speech? Do your declarations serve your vision or expose your vulnerabilities? Training the modern mind in ancient discipline. Strategic silence is a form of intellectual strength, and like any strength, it requires training. It begins by resisting the impulse to react. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every comment needs a correction. The person who responds to everything is ruled by others. The one who chooses their responses rules themselves. Practice this. In meetings, listen 80%, speak 20%. In conflict, let your silence mirror their emotion. In planning, say nothing until your moves are irreversible. When you do speak, it should land like a hammer, precise, deliberate, final. Silence is not emptiness, it's focus. There is a misconception that silence is passive, but silence is attention. It is the ability to direct your energy inward rather than leaking it outward. It is the rare skill of listening with purpose, not simply waiting your turn to speak. Machiavelli knew this intimately. In a world where betrayal could mean death, your greatest asset was what you did not say. Your enemies could only act on what they knew, and if they knew little, they had little to strike. Silence, then, is not hiding. It is control, not fear of speech, but mastery over it. Let the noise destroy itself. There's a strange power in watching others exhaust themselves in explanation. As they pour out their thoughts, their rationale, their pain, you sit still. You listen. You say only what's needed. The silence speaks louder than rebuttals ever could, and often they undo themselves. The loud become tangled in contradictions. The oversharers expose their gaps. The desperate to be understood become caricatures of themselves. Meanwhile, the silent strategist advances, uninterrupted, undetected, undefeated. The final illusion. Recognition. The most powerful players in history were not always the most visible. Often they worked through others. They avoided fame. They avoided the spotlight, not because they feared it, but because they understood that power thrives in its shadow. True mastery of silence means being content with results, not recognition. It means winning quietly. It means letting others take the credit while you steer the outcome. That's the last irony of Machiavellian silence. The best users of it rarely get praised for it. Their victories are mistaken for luck. Their influence is credited to others. Their power is invisible. And yet, it works. So what now? Now that you understand this strategy, the question is no longer what should I say? It's what should I withhold? It's what am I gaining by staying quiet? It's how can I move without announcement, so that by the time they hear me, it's already too late. Let others chase applause. Let others drown in explanation. Let them argue, confess, perform. You shut up and win. And when they ask how you did it, just smile and say nothing.